The book I decided to read was Black Hawk Down by Mark Bowden. It was written in 1999, and it captures the events of the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia in 1993 between Somali militia and the American military. I want to start by providing a little background for the book. There was a massive famine in Somalia, and Somali military militia began to gain power through food. There was one particular warlord named Muhammad Farah Aidid who became a very powerful faction leader by cutting off any international food supply that came to Somalia, and he began to control the country through this hunger. So, the United States military brought in troops to capture Aidid and help civilians get to food and make sure that international help in getting food to Somalia got to the people it needed to. Black Hawk Down is divided into 5 main parts. Part 1 is called The Assault. The book opens with Staff Sergeant Matt Eversman, a first-time chalk leader, saying a Hail Mary before lifting off with a force of U.S. Army Rangers and Delta Force operators in a Black Hawk helicopter. The goal of the mission was to capture 2 high-profile targets who were high-up lieutenants in Aidid's regime. After capturing the targets, the goal was to be back at the base hangar with the prisoners in under an hour. For this mission, pressure was high for Major General William Garrison, who saw each of the helicopters and Humvees off and told them to be careful, which was something unusual. The first part of the assault was successful, as 2 Delta teams led by Sergeants First Class Howe and Hooten stormed the building and captured all of the targets. Meanwhile, Rangers descended from the Blackhawks by rope. However, the tone was quickly set when Blackburn, a young soldier just out of high school, missed the rope on the fall and fell to the ground. Unfortunately, proper medical care never got to him because of the events that were about to unfold. Part 2 is called Black Hawk Down, and this is when the events start to turn bad and they get really hectic. Several Rangers witness an RPG strike the tail end of a Black Hawk named Super 6-1. It goes down, and the officers at JOC quickly realize that they've lost the initiative, and it instantly becomes a rescue mission. Another Black Hawk helicopter, Super 6-4, quickly took its place to provide cover fire. However, it was also hit, and the pilot named Durant could not recover, and it crashed as well. At this point in the story, an incredibly interesting perspective is provided by Bowden. It's a perspective from a Somali fighter named Moalim. He says that they shot down the Black Hawk because it was a symbol of UN power and Somali helplessness. And they also were able to take advantage of the American unwillingness to leave any soldier behind, and shooting down that helicopter meant drawing more Americans into the battle. Meanwhile, the ground convoy with the prisoners of war was taking heavy fire in their attempt to get back to the hangar. Miscommunication actually led to the convoy being given wrong directions for leaving the area. Out of about 75 men in that convoy, around half were hit by bullets or shrapnel. Part 3 of the book is called Overrun, and it has this title because all of the men on the ground were then sent to either of the crash sites to attempt to secure a perimeter there. However, hundreds of Somali people were racing to the sites, and gunfire was everywhere. Panic was in the air everywhere, both in the firefight and back at the hangar. At Super 6-4, the pilot Durant was captured alive by Somali militia. Part 4 is called The Alamo. As night fell, several units of men found a house to take for the night and began to treat their wounded. One of these wounded, Corporal Jamie Smith, died in that house and was a big morale shot to the men there. While in the house, the men received several transmissions that a rescue convoy was close to being sent on the way, but the timeline for that convoy kept being pushed back until the men were truly desperate. They finally heard the rumble of the convoy around midnight. Part 5, the final part, is called NSDQ, which is an acronym that stands for Night Stalkers Don't Quit, in honor to a letter that the pilot Durant wrote while in captivity. The rescue convoy was a multinational crew made up of Rangers, D-Boys, and men from the 10th Mountain Division, and they were finally on their way. When the convoy finally got to the first crash site where most of the remaining men were, it took until almost morning to load the injured into Humvees, and they realized there wasn't enough room for everyone to ride back. So, several soldiers were forced to run back along the streets they were fired at as they got to the house. When everyone was back safe at the stadium or the hangar, several men broke down when they found out about the soldiers killed in action. Durant remained captured by Somali militia and was eventually freed. The firefight was finally over, but the surviving soldiers were changed on a fundamental level because of the events of the Battle of Mogadishu. Throughout the book, I think Bowden does a really good job of highlighting several themes. The easiest one to see is courage and heroism in the face of fear. For hours on end throughout every event in the book, every man feared for his life for every second. That paralyzed some and that inspired others to save lives and help. And these stories are truly inspiring. However, I think a bigger theme that Bowden does a good job with his objectiveness in the book is being able to see the good and the bad and the brutality of war. One quote that stuck out to me about this came during the firefight. Bowden says, "The city was shredding them block by block. No place was safe. The air was alive with hurtling chunks of hot metal. They heard the awful slap of bullets into flesh and heard the screams and saw the insides of men's bodies spill out and watched the gray, blank parlor rise in the faces of their friends, and the best of men fought back despair." He doesn't shy away from the fact that war is brutal and innocent civilians died and honorable, brave American soldiers died and hundreds of Somali militia died, and war is a brutal thing, and especially in this kind of environment. Seeing this leads to some soldiers questioning why they're there, understandably, especially when Clinton pulled all of the troops out of Somalia just a little bit later. And so I think Bowden does a good job of being objective about the fact that there is the good, the honorable parts of war, and there are the bad parts of war with civilians dying. And as a whole, war is just brutality that can't be imagined, and it can't be understood unless you've gone through it. Black Hawk Down was a fascinating book to read, and I think Bowden did a great job with the telling of this event.